Good afternoon, folks. This is your ticker guy coming at you with an update for the last full week of October. Well, first off, let's talk about the media. Anna Schwartz, widely regarded as the most experienced and best versed monetarist and banking theorist alive. One of the few people who actually went through the Depression. 92, by the way. A very, very bright woman. Wrote an editorial last weekend in the Wall Street Journal, which essentially slammed Ben Bernanke. There was also an interview published with her in Barron's this week, not very complimentary to the monetarist policies of our central bank, nor to the people who have been intervening, such as Treasury Secretary Paulson. USA Today ran a story today in the money section on the fact that the TARP in the ESA isn't being used for its announced and intended purposes. Oh, gee, big surprise. I said something about that, I think it was a week before it was passed, right? That there was a catch-all phrase in there that Paulson can do whatever the hell he wants. Well, guess what? That's exactly what he did. We're finally starting to see some attention to this in the mainstream media. Unfortunately, it's about 4 or 5 weeks too late. What you saw on Friday was the potential for a stock market crash that was averted by very, very heavy intervention in the foreign exchange markets. Folks, that's where the real action is now. It's not in the stock market anymore. The credit markets and foreign exchange markets are inextricably interlinked because so much debt is denominated in monetary systems that are different from the originator or the holder. We even have people that have done this that are that dumb within individual nations. Not here in the United States so much, but over in Europe there are actually people who took out home mortgages denominated in Japanese yen. Of course, when the yen strengthened, they all of a sudden found that they owe 40% more than they owed originally. You have to wonder how somebody could be so just be so insane just to take out a house mortgage denominated in Japanese yen when you don't live in Japan. But this is what's happened. You have a lot of international firms and banks that are in the same situation. They are deeply underwater. Currency dislocations, folks, are the worst kind of problems because they come very rapidly and there is essentially nothing you can do to hedge them off if you happen to be on the wrong side of those trades. There are events that are, they say these are, 6, 7 sigma events. It basically means they're supposed to happen once in a lifetime in the universe. Well, guess what? We're getting them every 3, 4 days now. Congratulations. All these geniuses from Wharton and Yale and Harvard. Oh boy, it's doing you a lot of good now, isn't it? Hey Ben, how's that PhD working out? You thought you could figure out a Masters of the Universe type stuff. Well, it's not working very well. Here's the problem. If you look at the conventional indicators, TED spread, LIBOR, OIS, you'll see that all of those are indicating a significant easing in credit stress. What you're not seeing is that the problem has shifted. My thesis all along has been we're screwed, they're screwed worse. The Federal Reserve and the federal government, by backstopping different classes of debt, is essentially crowding out debt in all other areas to the exclusion of those. Because if you can get a 3% return, for example, or a 4% return in a government-guaranteed area of debt, why would you go for 4% in an unguaranteed area of debt? Well, of course you wouldn't. And what this ends up with is situations like PepsiCo trying to issue a bond and ending up paying a crazy spread over LIBOR for it because all of the money has flowed into these areas that are guaranteed by the federal government's resources. Bad news, folks. Down that line leads to the collapse of normal bond market funding for corporations. This is not a situation you want to see. This is how we get a depression, by the way. Bond market dislocation. It's on deck and it's happening now. What's likely to stoke this, though, is not going to happen here because over in Europe, we have banks that make our banks look like pikers. In fact, they look damn conservative next to some of those European banks. Leverage ratios of 30, 40, 50, 60 to 1. And a lot of the debt that they underwrote, hey, guess what? It's not in their home countries. It's things like, steel plants in India and China and stuff like that. Well, as the leverage starts to come out of those emerging markets, and it's nowhere near complete, folks, those loans are going underwater. And in some cases, they've been written in the foreign currency, which means as there are currency shifts, further stress gets placed on this. This is exactly what we had that caused our lock limit down situation. On Friday, this may repeat. On the technicals, we have people, including some very talented chartists and people who have made calls before, calling for an imminent crash this week, 2,000 to 3,000 points down in the Dow. I look at the charts, I see the same kind of things, okay? But you don't get a crash out of a chart. You get a crash out of the credit markets, always. It has always been that way. So what you need to watch is not the chart action. What you need to watch is whether or not they can manage to stabilize the Russian situation, the Hungarian situation, Belarus, and all of the loans that were written against emerging economies by banks over in the European area, because the ECB and the European currency pegs are being severely strained. If they crack, you will get the crash that everybody is predicting. But it isn't going to be because of some lines on a chart. It's going to be because the credit market comes apart. This is the problem with trying to backstop everybody and trying to tie your line to everybody else's ship. When theirs goes down, you get dragged underwater too. Let's hope that wiser heads prevail and we start to think about, hey, you know what? If these pegs break up and we start to see the sign of the other guy's ship going down, how do we cut the line off here so that America, you know, listen, we're going to get screwed in that situation. I mean, let's be honest. But we preserve our banking system and our way of life, because if we try to tie our government to this, remember, guys, with these emerging market loans, we're talking about $1 trillion, $1.5 trillion worth of exposure. Our government is only a $3 trillion a year thing. It's not that big. You try to take that and backstop this, and what you're likely to run into is that we all get dragged under the waves. Let's hope it doesn't happen. Also, let's remember something else. We have an election coming. You're going to get to express your opinion of the EESA and the TARP. That opinion is expressed not this Tuesday, but next Tuesday. Please take a look at supportedthebailout.org. Find your representative's name. Find your senators' names if they're up for election in this cycle. If they voted for this abortion, you need to vote them out of office, folks. I'm sorry, that's just how it goes. We, the people, must express our outrage. I'm seeing a very disturbing trend as well show up in a number of things. There was a protest last week on Wall Street looking for socialism. Folks, the answer isn't there. The problem isn't capitalism. We haven't had capitalism in the last 20 years. Capitalism is, in fact, marked by the fact that when you screw up, you go under. You go bankrupt. You lose. When you start guaranteeing people's losses, you don't have capitalism anymore. You have theft and fraud. Because I can make all the bets I want, and when I win, I keep the money, and when I lose, you get to pay. That's a problem. We don't have either of the presidential candidates that's going to do anything about this in a salutary manner at all. Quite frankly, I don't see any way that Senator McCain can win, just looking at the electoral vote map, and that's probably deserved. Neither one of them is going to have any kind of positive impact on the economy. The problem is I can't see rewarding Republicans when we've had George W. Bush, Henry Paulson, Ben Bernanke, all of them Republican either electees or appointees, that have created this mess, allowed it to go on, and allowed it to explode over the last 8 years. And oh, by the way, let's not forget Greenspan before him. The reality of the situation here is still stark. It still requires a great deal of attention on your part, and the pain level that is going to come is still very high. Those people who are calling a market bottom here, I believe you're going to be sorely disappointed if you follow them, and maybe severely hurt. The safest place to sit, believe it or not, still $1, at least for now. If we get dragged under the waves with everybody else, it isn't going to matter what currency you have. Those people who think that they can fly into other areas like gold or other currencies, this is a global problem, folks. It's not like Argentina, where we had one country that went down and the United States stayed stable. It isn't going to work that way this time. We've now got a global debt bubble, global deleveraging, and the question is going to be, where are the firewalls going to go up, if there are any at all? Keep track of what's going on a daily basis. Come on over to market-ticker.org. You can watch the updates there. I won't be putting videos up except about once a week. There'll be one more before we have the election so that we have a handle on exactly what's going on into that. But again, this evening in particular and tomorrow, what you need to pay attention to is the yen-dollar cross, the yen-euro cross, and the currency markets. And then on top of that, watch the futures and watch the news flow coming out of both Asia and Europe. Those are going to tell you whether or not the situation is going to stabilize going into this week. If not, buckle up and put your hat on. It's going to be a wild ride. Have a good day.